we are so used to viewing things in such a narrow space of counting and counting people and counting widgets and counting shoes or counting whatever, that we forget the love part of philanthropy that actually causes transformation.
Self-leadership can be lonely. It's hard to do the thing no one else wants to do, that no one else is willing to do. But you are not alone. There are others dancing through the fight and laughing as they lead. Let's find them, swap stories, and live through this together. Welcome to How I Live Through This. I'm your host, Ann Roach, and I'm really glad you're here. Today, I'm honored to be speaking to Bithiah Carter, the president of New England Blacks and Philanthropy. Bithiah has a passion for philanthropy and fueling the 21st century mindset by shining a light on racial assets and how they can be leveraged to improve education, workforce, and economic resources in our communities. Her experience is rooted in both Wall Street finance and community nonprofit and foundation leadership. Before becoming president of New England Blacks and Philanthropy, Bithiah served as executive director of Grand Circle Foundation, was senior director in the Community Impact Division of United Way, and program director at the Girls Coalition of Greater Boston. Bithiah also worked for nearly 10 years in the financial services industry in New York City and Boston. In addition, she serves as a member of the board of directors of several local and national nonprofit organizations. Welcome, Bithiah. I'm really glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
New England Blacks and Philanthropy's mission is to inform, reform, and transform philanthropy. Will you say more about what that means? What was philanthropy and what is it or can it be now?
That's a very good question. When I think of philanthropy, or I would say modern philanthropy, people think of the robber barons, right? You think of Carnegie, you think of Rockefeller, you think of old white men. And that is not where philanthropy started. Philanthropy has been around as long as we've been around, but we've had this new notion that a philanthropist is primarily someone who gives large amounts of money, right? And he for the most part, bestows these gifts as charity on some small organization that should be forever grateful. And it's comical, right? It's comical. It's comical for a number of reasons, particularly when I think about the traditional philanthropist. When it comes to their gift, it's usually through the eyes of charity, not change. In that traditional philanthropists, they're trying to solve some problem that they are not bringing the energy or the assets of the people who are experiencing that to the table, which is comical because you would never invest in that way, right? You would never say, I'm going to go to a cook and then start telling them how to make their dish because I have money.
Right.
You just wouldn't do that. So why do we do that here? And I think it's because it's wrapped up in power, class, race, especially the new philanthropy, race, and a number of things that creates this very interesting mix that we call philanthropy. So when we thought about what it is that we wanted to do, we wanted to change that mindset. And I was particularly struck by when I worked at United Way, we had donors, or even the community foundations. You normally have donors who want to do something, and they tend to want to be in this position, this exalted position of, I want to help those people. But they're not my people. They were always distant at arm's length. And those people were seen as less than, having no assets within their community, people that you can look at and say, there by the grace of God, go I.
Right.
Or people that we didn't believe had the ability to live a better life. And I found that fascinating because for the most part, every community I've ever seen has assets. And why are we not focusing on those assets? And to make that part, what really brought that to life for me was the fact that almost 9.5 years ago, I had a baby. And, when your child starts to walk, and every parent knows this, that child takes that first step or stands up, you're like, yes, God, oh my God, look at you. And then the child promptly falls on its butt. And you're like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Let's get back up. Come on, we could do this. And the child gets back up and you're like, yes, and you're cheering them on. And then that one step becomes 10 steps, become 100 steps, and thousands of steps. We never say to the child when it falls on its butt, I knew you were going to fall down.
Right.
We never said, oh, you just don't know how to put that one foot in front of the other, do you? Oh, okay, I know you're standing, but at what? I don't know if I should really buy you some shoes
Right.
because I'm not sure of this walking thing.
I can't believe I'm laughing, but that is such a good
Right?
analogy.
You don't,
Or
you don't do
what
that.
did you think was going to happen?
Well,
Right.
this is why we're going to wait on those shoes. Yeah, that's what we say to communities, right?
Oh,
We're
that's
like,
so good.
you stood up. Oh, you fell down.
Right. Well,
I don't know
what
if I'm
did you
going to give you any
expect?
more money. You didn't stay up the last time. So, you know what? Maybe I'll buy shoes next week. That's what we tell communities. And so we wanted to reform and really think through how we are evaluating change and the progress we're seeing in communities. How are we and inform the work and thinking about the assets of the community, reform the way that we talk about communities that hold thereby the grace of God go I, and then ultimately transform philanthropy that it works for everyone. And we think part of that transformation is the democratizing of philanthropy. That philanthropy is about time, talent, treasure, ties, and testimony, with actually treasure being the least of it, right? Because with the money, you're trying to buy influence, supplies. Money is just a vehicle to do the real love or love for community. And I think too often we get it, so to speak, twisted because we are so used to viewing things in such a narrow space of counting people and counting widgets and counting shoes or counting whatever, that we forget the love part of philanthropy that actually causes transformation. I know that was
I
long, so long.
love that. That is so good. The love part of philanthropy. Love rather than criticism or judgment or
Right.
even concern. Not that's not the right word.
But if you're concerned about someone, you tend to learn about them, right?
Yeah.
Your child,
Yeah.
when you're concerned about your child, you ask your child, what's the matter? How can I help you?
Right.
You don't say, let me tell you what you need. You need to think about this like mommy, and you don't do that.
Yeah.
And I think that genuine concern is lacking because sometimes we take the humanity out. Like it's like in our work, we particularly on when we think about inform, reform, and transform. On the inform part, I just get goosebumps thinking about it. And it's particularly every city I've been in. We we have been taught to, as Isabel Wilkerson has illustrated really well in her book Caste, to put people in a caste system, right? Some people are worth more and other people are worth less. So it's hard for me to be concerned about you if I don't value you, if I don't respect you. So
If
I
I
think
don't understand you.
I don't want to understand you
Right.
because I don't value you.
Right.
But I can judge you and I can tell you what you need to do, but I'm really not concerned about you. I'm concerned about me. and my legacy. And then you become part of that legacy.
Right. Oh, that's so good. I was talking to my friend Mandel Conway yesterday about his organization, Giving is Like. We talked about giving based on hearing the other person versus giving based on what I want to do, based on the giver. And it's what I'm hearing you say is
Well, I
that,
really believe in that. I
yeah,
believe in the reciprocity of giving. And one of the things that we talk about, and whenever we talk about the historical part of giving in Africa, when philanthropy, like in the 1600s, when philanthropy was practiced, the giver was the same as the receiver. So there was horizontal, right? And so horizontal philanthropy to me is philanthropy. It is important for us to understand that it's not what I want, but it's what our community need. What are the needs of our community and how are we moving that forward? How are we moving our community, our society forward? And I think the National Philanthropic Trust has this wonderful, like, historical timeline that they created about philanthropy and how it was changing the world. And, as we were looking through it, and I love this historical thing because you can look at it by region. As we were looking through the history of philanthropy, we happened upon, particularly through the National Philanthropic Trust, they talk about the Zulu tribe promotes this concept of horizontal philanthropy, where the giver, the receiver are the same. It was important for them to promote this way of Harambe, that we're pulling it all together to encourage collaboration, mutual aid, mutual support. And one of the things that I think that is fascinating, like now we talk about this as this is a new concept. This concept has been practiced as long as we've been on Earth.
yeah,
I think what's new is when we try to, how would I say, quantify that? Like, how do we quantify the heart? You can't. And so, in trying to quantify, or when we create this caste system, you have to create a rationale for why you think you're at the top of that caste system. And I think philanthropy plays a role in helping people think
right.
it's not the reality, but think that they're at the top of a caste system, a false caste system, because they think they can quantify the needs, the heart of a community. And I think that's why in a lot of spaces and places, philanthropy doesn't work, because what are the real outcomes you're trying to achieve? Are you really trying to, it's similar to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Are you just trying to create inclusion? Are you just trying to diversify this thing that you just have people sitting around a table looking a little bit different? Or are you really trying to create a society that's more equitable or increasing equity? So I do think this whole idea of it's more than it's hearing, but it's also moving beyond hearing, that to your first word, to a space of concern, to a space of love, to a place of understanding, to a place of mutual support, collective support to move us forward. And that doesn't mean just I'm sitting at your table. And one of the things that I think about a lot when people talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion, maybe we create a new table. I think philanthropy sometimes can sit in that caste system, similar to those other guys, and think we have the answers even though we don't have the answers. And so now philanthropy is very comfortable and say, we don't have the answers. So now we're going to listen to you. As long as you're saying something I want to hear.
Right.
But I'm curious to see how that's going to change. And I think as more people start to think about their own giving, as more people start to expand the definition of philanthropy beyond just money, I think there was a recent report that came out that says philanthropy is shrinking. Why? What's behind the shrinkage or lack of donations? I kind of took that information with a grain of salt. Is it really shrinking, or is it that people are doing it in a different way, and it's not being recorded by you?
Right. Right. I love that. What do you see, or where do you see philanthropy being done differently?
I think that's a funny question. When we say done differently, I think that's like, it's like a false truism, meaning philanthropy has always been
Right.
about givers and receivers, whether it's volunteerism, whether it's me giving you land, like we had just talked about in the Zulu tribe, where, you know, there was a gift being made without an expectation of something in return. So that was in the 1600s. There, people using their time to make their communities better, people using their talents to move issues forward. I think what was different, that we forgot that all of that stuff was part of philanthropy. And we started recording philanthropy as if it was one thing, money.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty modern sort of concept.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you just pointed that out. Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. We talked about democratizing philanthropy. You mentioned democratizing philanthropy, and I was listening to or reading an interview you gave, and you said, we need to democratize philanthropy because philanthropy is about power. If we want equitable outcomes for all people, we must want equitable power. This way, everyone can lead from their seats. And then you went on to say, democratizing philanthropy means that if everyone can become a philanthropist, we create countless leaders who can use their voices and philanthropic powers for the betterment of society and not just depend on the 1%. So I'm curious, when you talk about democratizing philanthropy and horizontal philanthropy, where do you see that happening, and where do you see that changing the modern culture around philanthropy?
Yeah. I really appreciate this conversation from so many different places. When you democratize the system, right? Because people have agency. We just choose not to see it, or we choose not to, or we choose to control it, or we choose to exclude it. I really discovered that people are afraid. Weak people are afraid of equity and democracy because they feel like they're going to lose control, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have the ability to live your life and live your life out loud, for the people who are repressed, thinking they must follow a certain system, certain space, a certain way of etiquette, a certain way of living, I think become not only angry, they become deviant. They want to hurt you, because how dare you live your life free, out loud? How dare you contribute and be authentic? So that authenticity you want to kill, because you're killing it inside yourself. And I think about that a lot, particularly being a Black woman. If you think of philanthropy as in my way of not only offering my time and building things, and my talent as in creativity, and my ties as in giving something agency, and then having the ability to testify about that out loud, that's scary, because I'm taking agency over my life, my community, my world that you can't take away from me.
Yeah.
And so I think for a lot of people, it becomes scary. And so therefore, we focus on philanthropy being very narrow. And only if you look like me and have had these opportunities can you truly be a philanthropist. And it's a way of diminishing or trying to diminish the power of others so that you can never lead from your seat. You can never become powerful unless I empower you,
Right.
unless I allow you to.
Right.
And I think when you stop counting by money, right, or stop using money as a metric to count, and you take that away, and you're looking at talent, you're looking at voice, you're looking at agency, you're looking at authenticity. Well, that just changed the whole table, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. And it's an invitation. And in some ways, it's an invitation to show for everybody who's afraid to show up as their fullest self, because they may have gifts to offer in return. You mentioned love before, and I think that current is such a beautiful position to stand in, because it does encourage people to show up as their fullest. I'm kind of going off track here. I did want to say that I love when you use the word empower, I loved what it sparked in my brain. And I'm so grateful for this is I use that word a lot as a coach, helping to empower people to own their own, whatever it is. But I hadn't thought, until I heard you say that, I hadn't thought of that as it still being about me. If I'm empowering you, I'm still holding the power to unlock you.
But you don't have that power.
I don't.
No, you don't. I know. We always talk about empowering someone. You can't empower anyone. What you can do is share with them some of your thoughts. The only person that can empower someone.
That's right. Is themselves.
You can walk with me. You can share your story. You can inspire me, but you can't give me power. And the beauty is, you can't take it away from me. You can ignore it. You can kill me. You can, I think about, again, Hampton Roads,
What, just so for context, what is, you said that, yeah, I mean, I know what Hampton Roads, but tell me what that is.
We created a report, Giving Black Hampton Roads. And within our reports, we want to understand the history of that place. Like, what happened? How did this place become this place? And even though we're all from the United States of America, our place holds stories, right? That makes us a little bit different. Not a lot, but it's interesting how things grow up. So Hampton Roads is really important and became important in 2019 because of 1619, 400 years, 20 odd people showed up enslaved. And they didn't just show up, they were brought in chains, enslaved in the United States. And it's a horrible story, right? It's a horrible story. And I think we often talk about that story as in, oh my God, those people, those slaves, they had nothing. And, and you go from that to they must have been ignorant, dumb. They were savages. And some people use it as a way of saying, well, slavery was bad, but look what we've done. We made them Christians. We've really empowered them to be better people today. And it's a lie, right?
Yeah.
People that were brought here were multilingual. They were highly educated. Some of them were highly educated. Some were Muslims, some were Christians. Some were practicing medicines. They taught white people how to build different houses. They brought so many skills and like straight up talents to people that had very few talents. And this is not something that I'm making up to feel better about being Black. It's historically there for anyone to read, even on the Park Service website. It's a beautiful thing, right? Because we can no longer deny this history. So when I think about how we view people, how we value people, and the role of philanthropy in that, we do use these words like, I'm going to empower this community. I'm going to transform this community.
Mm,
How? How? You can't do that. You don't know what that community, you have refused to see for the most part what that community is undoing,
mm,
because it's like critical race theory, right? You don't want to see it. You don't want to believe it. So how can you undo something that you don't believe in from the
mm,
first place? I personally think white people haven't been equitable amongst white people. So so racial equity is a whole new thing. Like, what? What does that mean? And so I think that in order to empower someone, that's why I believe you can only empower yourself, because the only power you have over someone is yourself. You
yeah.
only have power over yourself. That's all I can do. Even my child, I can't empower my child. I hopefully can inspire my child. I can hopefully help her see things, but she's got to pick that spark up to create that fire in herself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that, and I also love this conversation. I love every conversation I have with you, but it's really helping me dig even deeper into the assumptions and translate the assumptions that I make without even realizing the unconscious assumptions I'm making, and even the language that I use in a way without really thinking about what that language means, where it came from, and the limits of it. So that's awesome.
But we
Um,
all have
Go ahead.
that, right?
Yes.
Because that's the air we breathe. That's what we're
Yeah.
taught. That's what we were rewarded for. You know, she empowered millions of people. We all clap. We eat the rubber chicken. This is what's held up as,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, did you see?
Yeah.
So how would you be, I don't know, vaccinated against that? I don't know.
By having conversations like this and by having real, open, non-judgmental conversations with each other and allowing ourselves to look at ourselves really honestly and without judgment. I think it's helpful to take the judgment out of it and just say, "Oh, yeah, that's there. I didn't realize that was there, and now I have a choice on
Yeah.
how I want to move forward." Going back to philanthropy, will you share a moment of where you felt your work or saw your work making a difference?
Yeah. I so love my work. I love my work a little too much because I'm not getting paid enough. Um, so, and it's so hard to get our work funded. And I think it's hard because we're not putting out that gospel of philanthropy that people are used to hearing. We're not here to tell people um, or to advance the caste system or tell people you're so great. How can you help us? You know, I I try to be honest about who I am and what I represent, and I think our work does that. I am so proud to be. I am so proud of my ancestry. I am descendant of American Blacks who were enslaved. I find that to be a strength, because we're talking about people who were I don't even know how to envision what slavery was about. Like, it boggles my mind. And to think that this group of people not only lived through that, but also had a dream that, and I am that dream, that I would not only be educated, and they believed it, right? That I would have agency, I will have power, I will use my gifts to make this world better. And I don't know how you can do that in such an oppressive situation, and people trying to kill your spirit, not just you physically, but your spirit daily. So I think, I think the history of the United States is told from a very narrow, if you can imagine, you have this huge basin of water that is holding 100 gallons, and you have a straw that you're sipping
Mm,
out of it. I feel like that's our history that we're taught. And I knew, you know, I know that my great grandmother was born into slavery. I know that my great great grandmother was a slave. So it's not that long ago. I met my great grandmother, right? And that to me boggles my mind, right? Like, whoa, it's not like it's not like Egypt and the pyramids.
yeah.
This is who we are. Yet we try to erase my great grandmother and her mother at every turn. And I just knew that we accomplished incredible things during that time. I knew that not every enslaved person was helped by a white person. I knew that schools were being built by black people. I knew that black people were fighting for the rights of black people. Yet we didn't have any of those stories. And whenever you saw anything, it's like this barefoot, barely, beaten person that we could pity. So the part we started creating this work, Giving Black, and I have to, Combined Jewish Philanthropies, bless their heart. I met with the leader of Combined Jewish Philanthropy one day, and he said, "So, you're New England Blacks and Philanthropy. Tell me about Black philanthropy." And I realized I did not have a historical context for that. We can talk about Black people giving to church, and we could, name maybe one or two people. But unlike Jewish people, we couldn't go into that historical part, or we because that information was missing. I think there is something very comforting, particularly amongst white people, to really focus on the fact that we give to church, because thank goodness they're giving to Jesus, they're giving to goodness.
Mm,
It's something very uncomfortable thinking that we are giving to the Black Panthers.
right.
Oh, we're giving to our freedom and our liberation. It's
Right.
like, oh, but what? You doing what? So I don't think many people were capturing how
Right.
we were funding our own revolution, our own liberation. And going back to empowerment, they were very, I think for the most part, white people, were very comfortable in the notion of white people funding or empowering, because I can take it
Right.
back when I want to. I can
Yes.
give it to you when I think you
I still
deserve
have
it.
power over it, right?
Right? There's an agency, a power over
Right.
that. So when we started doing these reports, and we want to do 100 of them, we're a long ways off. So we are desperately seeking funding for this, but I have to give it to Kellogg, W.K. Kellogg Foundation, Alondra Washington. They believed when we told them that we wanted to do this work. They actually believed,
Mm,
and no one else believed us. They were like, "You're going to do what?" And I am so thankful for Alondra and W.K. Kellogg, Alondra Washington and W.K. Kellogg taking a chance on us doing this sort of research to better understand Black giving, not just as Black gives a larger percentage of their income, because, and we tend to, or Black people, we are philanthropic. Yes, we are. But they took that chance on us really, truly understanding what is underneath Black giving. Where do we give? How do we give? What motivates our giving? And took a chance on us doing that research. And I think that we have had an amazing impact on how people, not just Black people, how people view, look at, embrace Black philanthropy. Alondra started this work, but Arelis Diaz and Cicely Moore have been our partners in this work as well. And I think they will tell you what we have been able to do is really democratize philanthropy by helping people see the legacy of their philanthropy from a historical period in time, like the beginning or the making of the United States, to today, and hopefully where can that legacy go in the future. Our reports start with a historical perspective. Who were the first philanthropists in that community? How did their philanthropic giving, time, talent, treasure, tithes, and testimony change the tenor of that society? And what is the legacy of that today? And I think every city that we have ever done this report, and we are looking to go to more cities, what we have heard from the community at large, white people, Black people, the community foundations, that it was transformational. It helped them see themselves in a different light. It helped to democratize the conversation of philanthropy. It arrested that notion that maybe these communities don't quite have assets. I think it helped people shift the paradigm of focusing on from deficits to truly focusing on the assets of that community. And I feel like we're just a vessel for that. But I really think that it has helped to transform the conversation. It's one thing to sit on high, or I would say whether you are, national foundation, community foundation, or whatever, to talk about what should be done in philanthropy, right? But you're still not just opening those floodgates and say, here are 5 questions and get your philanthropic gift. You're still going through a whole host of program directors and, this bureaucrat and that bureaucrat and a board that votes in order to get like $10, $20, $30,000.
Right.
I think what is transformational is what happens when the work gets done outside of that system. And, again, when it's money that is being measured, you can have control. But when it's the work that's being done, or the conversation is changing, or the tenor of the conversation is changing, that's a whole nother thing, right? And I'm not sure, I wonder in a few years, what will philanthropy look like when it's no longer controlled by this business of philanthropy?
Yeah. That was going to be my next question. What do you hope for the future? What do you see happening?
Much like I think about nonprofits, I'm hoping that philanthropy in that, robber baron sort of sense of the word seeks to exist. That's what I hope. Like nonprofits, the goal of a nonprofit should be to work itself out of business. So
yes.
How would I work myself out of business? That our work actually becomes part of every child's history book. That we truly talk about our history in the fullness of all of us, right? But maybe it's not even called his story anymore or her story. Maybe we have a new word for it, our story, or something that is really more inclusive of telling the story of all of us. I also think that hopefully when we create a more equitable society, philanthropy again isn't necessary. One of the things I think about, and hopefully Bill Gates isn't listening to this, but I do think about Bill Gates, right? Or I think about or others, who are trying to create equity. And now I have billions and I'm going to sit down and think about what I can do for society. Well, you could have done something a long time ago. And you know what you could have done? You could have put plants right here in the United States that would have put people to work at a living wage and allow people to keep jobs, right? And be able to take care of their own families, or be able to grow their own knowledge, or create their own schools, or be able to sustain and maintain and sustain and thrive. Instead, you chose to find the cheapest labor wherever you could in the world, build it there, create what you call shareholder value, become uber wealthy, and then say, oh, I'm going to create equity. How can you create equity from an inequitable space or system? The future of philanthropy, I think, is to be, when we talk about equity or diversity or inclusion, it can't be, in particular, because the money is not coming from poor people. I should say financially deprived people. That's what I'll say, because poor is a state of mind. The money is coming from a lot of these mega wealthy people that we're paying attention to that made money through inequitable ways that, maybe, Bill, you could have cut your earnings to maybe a tenth and you still would have been okay. But what if you had created, instead of creating this huge mega philanthropic business, what if you had just created more equity and wealth by changing the way that you do business? And I'm hoping that in the future, that's the mindset. If you have the opportunity to find the cheapest labor, is that the equitable thing to do? And maybe you do the equitable thing so you don't have to follow it with the philanthropic thing afterward.
Yeah. I love that. That goes back to the table. How about we don't have a table? How about we don't have this mindset of inviting people to a table that didn't work in the first place?
It didn't work.
But we just take that all down, blow down the walls and say, let's all be here. What do we need? What does everybody need?
But that requires me to see you and you see me.
Yeah.
That requires me to honor you as a